Tonight on Primetime Politics, demanding a public account.
What's she hiding? Is she hiding that Trudeau lost control of the deficit this year, just like every year?
Conservatives offer 2 hours of an opposition day next week, giving time for the government to table a fall economic statement. We'll find out why Liberals are balking at the offer as we gather the House leaders.
We're putting our emphasis and prioritization and our time and efforts on the first portion of the bill, which deals with child sex predators.
The Justice Minister splits his controversial online harms bill. We'll speak with Minister Arif Virani about his plan to protect minors from sexual predators and ask what he is sacrificing to get that part of his legislation passed. Plus,
fighting climate change is difficult, and that's where you see leadership.
The Environment Minister pushes back on criticisms of his carbon tax. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. The Conservative leader is making an offer to the governing Liberals, offering them 2 hours of a Conservative opposition day next week so that the government can table its fall economic statement. Now, in more normal times, that would have been tabled weeks ago, but Pierre Poilievre is not doing this to be helpful to the government. What Poilievre wants is a public admission from the Trudeau Liberals that they have blown past their own financial guardrails. Take a listen to the Conservative leader, followed by Government House Leader Karina Guilbeault.
So we're today, Common Sense Conservatives, are calling for the Finance Minister to introduce a fall update to indicate whether she's keeping her promise to cap the deficit at $40 billion or whether Trudeau has completely lost control of the deficit once again.
What I would say to them is that we should end the filibuster. That is something that is extremely important. It's enough, right? There's important work that we need to get done, and so, you know, instead of just giving up a couple of hours, they should actually just send this to Proc where the Speaker sent it in the first place.
Well, joining us now are the Deputy House Leader for the government, Mark Gerretsen, Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer, and NDP House Leader Peter Julian. Hello to the three of you.
Hi, how you doing?
You know, listen, admittedly, when we invited the three of you today, I thought we'd start with the Conservative motion of non-confidence that comes up tomorrow. Instead, we're getting this offer from Pierre Poilievre to give up some time for a fall economic update. Mr. Scheer, I'll begin with you. What is your party trying to accomplish here?
Well, we need to know just how bad the deficit has gotten. Normally, the public accounts for Canada are already tabled by now. Normally, there's already a fall economic update where Canadians can see an update on the nation's finances, know just how much the government is spending and how much they're taking in taxes. It's now well into December, and there's no sign of this update being given to Canadians. So what we're saying is, look, we understand that the Speaker has ordered that Parliament must be suspended until the Liberals comply with the order on the slush fund scandal, but we're willing to say, look, let's offer up some of our day, one of the days the opposition is given to propose a motion to allow the Minister of Finance to come clean, to show Canadians where we're at. We've got a lot going on this year. We've seen labour disruptions across the country. We've seen the Liberals hiking the carbon tax continually. They brought in capital gains hikes, and so we need to know exactly where we're at in terms of our economic situation, but also how bad the deficit is, because Justin Trudeau himself admitted that big deficits cause inflation. We know prices are still high and still climbing, and so we just want some accountability and transparency and have the government show Canadians where we're at.
Okay, so accountability, transparency is the argument, Mr. Gerretsen. Why not take up the Conservative offer? Is your government worried about bad economic numbers?
If only the Conservatives' motives were so genuine and as sincere as Mr. Scheer has alluded to. But the reality is that Mr. Poilievre and Conservatives are offering 2 hours just before we go into a time when we're going to be doing a number of votes and then rising. Typically, we do these earlier on in the fall. The Conservatives are now suddenly trying to suggest that they're offering this time. This isn't how we do fall economic statements. We bring the statement into the House, it gets properly debated, and then we allow it to go to a vote. What the Conservatives are offering filibustering really, in my opinion, is just an opportunity for Pierre Poilievre to get up and speak in the House after the fall economic statement so he can hear himself talk and probably recite a lot of the slogans that we hear so often. So listen, I don't believe that this offer is genuine or sincere. I genuinely believe that this is just gamesmanship and political partisanship when we should be really focusing on getting things done for Canadians, which is what we've wanted to do. And if the Conservatives were so genuine in this offer, why didn't they offer it weeks ago when we normally would have done a fall economic statement?
Okay, Mr. Julian, what's your take? Should the government take advantage of this offer? Because we certainly are calling it close when it comes to a fall economic statement. There's just 2 weeks left in this sitting.
Well, I mean, the Conservatives are a bit disingenuous. The reality is, on Monday, we had a unanimous consent motion that would have sorted out a number of things over the next 2 weeks, including opposition days, and the Conservatives said no, and they said no to their own opposition day as well, which was absolutely bizarre. So these are the kinds of games that Mr. Poilievre seems to be playing. I don't think it has much credibility with Canadians, and this is why I think the Conservatives are losing ground. They see the difference between the rhetoric and the reality. The fact is, we do have, I think, grounds for an important debate around the issue of the fall economic statement. But what we've been saying, what the NDP has been saying as adults in the room, is that the Conservatives should stop their filibuster around the issue of their own motion, and the Liberals should be providing the STTC documents that Parliament has called for. And neither the Liberals or the Conservatives have actually stepped up in an adult way to get this resolved so we can move on to other issues.
Can I just respond to some of the procedures? Yeah. First of all, there have been a number of ways that finance ministers have presented fall economic updates. Mr. Gerretsen might have been referring to the budget debate, which does normally take a few days, but fall economic updates can be done almost any way, almost any day. They have chosen not to do it on a given day when ministers are allowed to give a statement. So we're saying, since they're refusing to do it on days that they control, well, let's offer them one of ours. And I still haven't heard a good reason why not. If the Liberals have a better idea, if they'd like to do it at a different time of day or on a different day of the week, let's make a deal right now. Let's find out what they would prefer, because what we want, we don't care which day it is, as long as it's done before the House rises for Christmas. We think it's fair to have the economic update provided to Canadians in such a way that parliamentarians can analyze the debate and hold the government to account. That's why we're here.
Where was the sense of urgency before today, Andrew? This is suddenly. You thought we were going to do it. You guys have been holding up the Parliament hostage for the last 2.5 months. To Mr. Julian,
why not take up the offer, though? You might be taking a point as to the delay of these past weeks, Mr. Gerretsen, but here there is an opportunity to put down a fall economic statement. Why not jump on it?
Because we won't have the opportunity to debate it, because as soon as the 2-hour time period that Mr. Poilievre has apparently so graciously offered out of his own time expires, we go right back to the filibustering that they had done before. You know, and to Mr. Julian's point about saying the Conservatives should just let this go so we can get back to the work of Canadians, I would remind him that he and the NDP have already demonstrated how they can help us do work. They chose it to be important for the one issue regarding the GST holiday, and they were able to put aside the filibustering that the Conservatives are doing for that one day. So, you know, to Mr. Julian's point, they can help us get through this. They're choosing not to. We can put to bed this whole filibustering process that's been going on. The NDP know how to do it. They did it for the GST tax holiday, and now they just don't seem to be interested in doing it. Apparently, that was the only thing that mattered to them.
Well, except that, you know, the Conservatives are offering you 2 hours to put the filibuster aside for a fall economic update. I'm still confused as to why you're not using that.
Well, now he's saying 4. This is the first time I've heard 4 hours.
Let's make a deal.
Do we hear 8? Do we hear 10?
You tell us what you need. We believe it's important. We believe it's important for Canadians to get an update about how much you're spending, how big the deficit is, how much more you're taking in taxes.
Right.
If you say 2 hours is not enough, I can go upstairs. We can.
Maybe we should chat about it afterwards. But the reality is, and Mr.
I'm happy for you to negotiate it here on air.
Real time.
CPAC is getting a scoop here.
But I will just say, you know, to Mr. Scheer's point, and to what he said previously, there are many different ways that a fall economic statement can be introduced. It can be done in the House. It can be done in various different ways. And so the government is not going to put itself in a position where we are beholden to the exact demands and the very strict time frame that is given to us by Conservatives because of the games that they've been playing in the House of Commons for the last 3 months. We, when we deliver a fall economic statement, we want Canadians to have the opportunity to reflect on it, and we want members of Parliament to be able to speak to it. So maybe it's time to stop.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gerretsen. Mr. Gerretsen. Is it a sense of suspicion then that prevents you from putting down a fall economic statement?
Of course not. And as I said, the minister will do that at the appropriate time that she determines is in the best interest to do that. But what we want is to make sure that when we do it, there's an opportunity to debate the issue. A strict 2-hour time period, it does not give us an opportunity to discuss it. We've had now over 220 Conservatives speak to a filibuster that they've been going on since the end of September. If they could just put that aside and let us debate something like the fall economic statement that actually really does matter, then we'd be in business. And I just don't see us there. I see this as Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives offering, something in a disingenuous fashion for political interests and political reasons.
Okay, let me jump in. And because I apologize to Mr. Scheer, Mr. Gerretsen, but we only have a minute left. So, Mr. Julian, it is yours to clean this up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. And this is the reality. As parliamentarians, we have the right by unanimous consent to do anything, create a space for a fall economic update. We had the ban on conversion therapy passed in 3 stages right after the last election, and Aaron O'Toole was deposed as leader of the Conservative Party as a result. Since Mr. Poilievre has come in, there has been no grounds for actually getting Parliament in place, and the NDP has had to intervene numerous times to get Parliament moving and to get things for people like dental care, like pharmacare, like the anti-scab legislation, like affordable housing, like the GST relief on essentials. We believe it should be permanent. And it should cover home heating and should cover telecom. And the Liberals want to make it strictly limited to children's essentials and have that brief Christmas period proposed by the Conservatives originally to have that GST relief. The NDP takes a different approach, and Jagmeet Singh takes a different approach. And what I would implore the other parties to do is to work with us so that we can actually get things done for Canadians.
Okay, well, that is the time. Of course, the offer was made today. We'll see where it goes tomorrow. Mark Gerretsen, Andrew Scheer, Peter Julian, thank you for the time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The Justice Minister announced he is splitting his proposed online harms bill. Arif Virani making the decision today, saying the more controversial portions of the bill, those that deal with online hate speech and the complaints process, will be dealt with down the road in order that legislation around protecting children from online sexual abuse can be passed quickly and before any dissolution of the House. We are now joined by the Federal Justice Minister, Arif Virani. Minister Virani, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Listen, let's begin with the timing here, because it took your government years to introduce a bill to address online abuse. And only after months of delay in the House, you announced that you will be splitting the bill in order to get it moving quickly. Why did it take so long to get to this point?
Well, I'd say to you that we consulted extensively on the bill, and because we wanted to get it right, we looked at domestic expertise, we looked at international comparators. That took time, years in fact, and we tabled a very comprehensive bill in February. In the spring, we started debate on this bill, and I thought that was a promising start. After Labor Day, we returned to the House of Commons. We also recommenced debate on this bill. I was encouraged by that as well. What I've unfortunately seen for the last 3 months is a complete blockage of the chamber that is right behind me, and that's been frustrating. It's been frustrating to me as a parliamentarian. It's been frustrating to me as Minister of Justice, who's put a lot of effort and thought into this very piece of legislation. Now we're approaching Christmas. I had a tough decision to make. Do I want to see this bill die on the order paper, or do I want to see parts of this bill expedited where I believe that we can reach some consensus? I chose the latter. I think it's an important decision because ultimately my job is to protect Canadians, and I'm going to target the most vulnerable Canadians, which are our kids. And I approach that from that vein that protecting and combating hate against hate is important, but protecting kids, including kids who might face fatal dangers, is urgent, and I'm proceeding with urgency on the parts of this bill where I believe I can achieve a consensus.
Okay, so you think you can achieve the consensus, and we look at this, the Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act. It again will now consist of 2 parts. One part will deal with keeping children safe online, which includes sexploitation, pornography. The second part relates to the Criminal Code and Human Rights Act, which includes the controversial section on free speech. Given that you have split the bill and the priority is the section on child safety, do you think you will be able to pass the second part of this, which you have said would give Canadians a recourse on discriminatory hate speech?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful, Michael, and I want Canadians to understand that when you bifurcate the bill, we are not leaving one part aside. We will still be pursuing both pieces of legislation. We'll be pursuing the portions that deal with addressing children with prioritization, working very, very quickly on those. But the portions that relate to amending the Criminal Code and amending the Canadian Rights Act remain on the floor of the legislature for debate and further study. I think what is also clear to all Canadians is that we have seen rising hatred in this country. There are a lot of ideas about what we should do in terms of how to address that hatred. We've heard people that support the bill. We've heard people that want the bill refined to provide more clarity. I'm all ears and willing to entertain good faith suggestions to improving the hatred components of this bill, but also to improving the portions that deal with combating child sex predation, and also things like bullying, inducing a child to self-harm, and the sharing of what's called revenge porn. These are critical things that help keep our kids safe. I think what's now clear is that the ball is in the court of my opposition parliamentarian colleagues. I've already had good indications from the Bloc Québécois, the NDP. The Conservative Party has unfortunately been blocking everything in the chamber right behind me for 3 months now, but I've been given some reason for optimism that even the Conservatives will get behind this bill because they appreciate the urgency and appreciate the need to proceed in a nonpartisan manner.
Okay, so perhaps a political path forward. But, you know, I also wonder about what your government is doing to ensure big tech social media platforms are putting in place the guardrails they promised to prevent or reduce online abuse.
Well, I'll say to you, Michael, that it's been frustrating because what we've seen is a checkerboard response, right? We've seen some companies taking pretty aggressive steps, others taking very few steps. What we're trying to do is eliminate that checkerboard, provide Canadians with the stability and understanding that regardless of which platform your child is on, which app that they are using, for example, that this will address the safety of children online across the board and set a new floor. What I've been encouraged by, Michael, is actually has been the response of social media companies thus far, as opposed to rolling up the sleeves, gloves off, getting ready for battle. It has been quite the opposite. Social media companies have been reaching out to me in my office, considering ways of how they can collaborate with us in order to get this across the finish line. I think it's helped by the fact that we are the 6th or the 7th democracy in the Western world that is moving in this area. They've already seen what other international allies have done in this area. They've realized that more needs to be done to protect children around the world and in Canada, and they're willing to work with us in that regard.
Okay. Now, you know, I do wonder, in the time we have left, I wonder what, in your opinion, will happen if Bill C-63 does not pass before the House is dissolved and another election takes place?
Well, if you take your cues from what the official opposition has presented as their proposed alternative, there is some consideration about criminal code reform, but that's it. And I think that's problematic because what I've heard from law enforcement and what I've heard from parents, including people like Carol Todd, the mother of Amanda Todd, is that the victimization of her daughter still occurs 10 years after her death. The reason why is because images of Amanda's naked body continue to circulate online 10 years after she passed by suicide. What she wants and what the police have told me that they want to deliver is for those images to simply come down. That is possible with this piece of legislation because it imposes duties on social media platforms and requires them to take down child sex abuse material and revenge porn within a 24-hour time period. So I'm very confident that that's the right solution. It needs to pass, and that's why I'm putting a lot of effort and political capital on the line to ensure that by bifurcating, we can proceed with speed on the parts where we can achieve a consensus. I have confidence in the better principled nature of my colleagues in the chamber from other parties and their willingness to work in a nonpartisan way to keep kids safe. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, lives are at stake here, and that's important.
Mr. Arif Virani, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's turn our attention now to the Prime Minister's environmental policies as they came under attack last night, and it came from a fellow Liberal during a party fundraiser. Bonnie Crombie is the Ontario Liberal leader, and in a speech she gave at that fundraiser, she said, quote, "I'm not here to tell the Prime Minister how to do his job, but I promise you I will tell him when he's wrong, like on the carbon tax." The Environment Minister, Guilbeault, was asked about that comment today. Here's what we heard.
Are you saying Ms. Crombie's not showing leadership? Are you saying she's a weak leader? Are you saying she's not showing leadership?
I'm saying that it's tough to fight climate change, and being a leader is doing difficult things sometimes, even if they're unpopular, but they're the right thing to do.
Now, we did speak with Minister Guilbeault this week, and we did talk about the criticism his government's carbon tax receives, but we began our discussion with COP29 and the controversy that followed that international gathering. Well, for more, we're now joined by the Minister for the Environment, Steven Guilbeault. Minister, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Michael.
So listen, let's begin with the reaction to the deal signed in COP29. The deal essentially developed to help countries adapt to climate change, $300 billion a year by 2035. That is the amount that's been successfully negotiated. But as you know, one delegate called it a joke because climate experts say the real amount needed would be over $1 trillion a year. Is this deal really something to celebrate?
I think it is. First, $300 billion per year is triple the previous amount that was agreed upon. So it's 3 times more. And we've always understood it, and I'm not debating that 1 trillion number, and most experts would agree on that. But it was clear from the beginning that all of that money wouldn't be able to come just from governments. I mean, of course, governments have an important role to play, but we need to have on board multilateral institutions, regional development bank, the World Bank, the international monetary funds, and the private sector. This is how we will get from $300 billion to $1 trillion. And a very good example of that is a fund that I announced when I was in Baku called Gaia. And it's a fund where, with a little over $150 million of Canadian public money, we will be able to mobilize $2 billion for developing countries, small island state, and 70% of those dollars will be for adaptation project, which is a key priority for them. So that's how we get from $300 billion to $1 trillion, by using public dollars as a catalyst to get more money from other sources so we can multiply those investments.
Mm-hmm. Does it at all indicate a growing fatigue, though, amongst countries to put the environment as a top agenda item when many people in their own countries are dealing with inflationary pressures, trying to make ends meet? Is there a fatigue setting in that prevented a larger figure, though?
I don't think so. I think it was clear to me from the beginning, and clear to most, like those who, honestly, Michael, those who say that they seriously thought that governments would be able to mobilize just by themselves $1 trillion are being dishonest. They knew this was never going to happen. The question is, how do we get there? And that's exactly what the agreement that was agreed upon in Baku enables us to do. Like you mobilize a lot of public funds, and for those who think, like, why should we be doing that? Why should Canadian dollars be used in the developing world? Well, for a number of different reasons. I mean, one, those countries are suffering a lot from the impacts of climate change, and they didn't contribute. And the more we can help those countries face the impacts of climate change, the less we will see international massive migratory issues all around the world, because people will be able to stay home, which is what they want. And thirdly, Michael, we have to realize that often when we make those investments, often it will be with Canadian technologies and Canadian know-how that we will do in partnership with these countries. So it is good for the environment, it is good for the economy, and it's good for people.
Except that, you know, in terms of this country, we have a very near neighbor, close ally in the United States. Donald Trump will be inaugurated come January. And already he says once inaugurated, he will pull the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. He'll reverse a number of climate actions of the Biden administration. Can we afford to be out of step with the United States, given how closely our two countries operate with each other, and given the burden sharing on so many things with the United States? If they're not in it, does it still make sense for Canada to be as invested?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to say about that. The first is that when President Biden was president last time, he did pull the United States out of the Paris Accord. And we kept going, because it's not about one country, it's about 194 countries. Number two, when I was in Baku, I met with a number of U.S. delegates, including representatives from U.S. states. There were more than 20 U.S. states represented in Baku by governors and ministers, from the Minister of Energy from California, with whom I had a lovely conversation about how we can continue collaborating together and working together. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. They want to continue working with Canada on transitioning, on investing in clean technologies, on investing in renewable energies, on protecting nature. And California is one of those many states in the U.S. who, regardless of what happens at the federal level, will continue to work on these things, and they will be looking for partners. And I think Canada is an ideal partner for a great many of these states.
Okay, except that Donald Trump is also looking for partner, perhaps in different areas, though. And here you have the Prime Minister traveling down to Mar-a-Lago on Friday to have dinner with Donald Trump, trying to preserve Canadian trade with the United States. And we know on that level, Donald Trump is very interested in Canadian energy. He in fact needs Canadian oil to get gas prices down in the United States, an election promise that he made. How will Canada meet that demand if, for example, Ottawa is putting an emissions cap on Canada's oil and gas industry? Because we are hearing from Premier Danielle Smith saying that emissions cap will affect the amount of exports we can get to the United States when the U.S. actually wants more oil and gas from Canada.
Well, we'll have to see what happens to our energy exports to the U.S. Obviously, if President Trump wants to impose a 25% tariff on all things Canadians. But the second thing is that, and Premier Smith knows that very well, the cap on pollution we're putting in place will allow production of oil and gas to increase by 2030. About half of what we're asking companies to do in terms of reducing their pollution can be done through existing technologies and technologies where those companies will make money by reducing their
pollution, reducing methane emission, for example, very powerful greenhouse gas. And you will see a number of U.S. states continue to invest in these technologies as well. And the reality is that we are heading into a world where, according to the International Energy Agency, the demand for oil is going to be reduced by 5-6% by 2030. And so those producers of oil will have to make sure that they can lower their emissions as much as they can, because that's where the demand will come from. People will want to have energy projects and energy products that have the lowest impact on the environment as possible. And that's why we're setting the stage for Canada to be able to compete on the world stage with these new circumstances.
Okay, so setting the stage is your argument. But, you know, I wonder, because you've been in the environmental game long before coming to Ottawa, I wonder if you are worried, though, about the environmental legacy of this country in the next few years down. Because on the one hand, you have Donald Trump coming in January, and here at home, your government will be facing another election campaign within the calendar year. I'm wondering if you're worried about environmental policy going forward.
Well, I mean, I think we have a lot to show in terms of what we've done, what our government has done to put forward the issue of environmental protection and clean air and clean water for Canadians. Our pollution is at its lowest level in 25 years. We've never seen pollution go down in Canada while the economy was going up the way it is now. We've substantially increased nature protection all across the country. We weren't protecting 1% of our oceans and coastline in 2015. We're almost at 16% protection. But of course, this could be jeopardized if Pierre Poilievre becomes Prime Minister of Canada, because just like Donald Trump, really, he wants to repeal a number of our rules, regulations, and laws to protect Canadians from environmental harms, to protect Canadians from the impacts of climate change. This is what Pierre Poilievre will do. So yes, part of me is worried, but obviously I will continue working hard to protect Canadians and to ensure that we can have the best legacy possible when it comes to environmental protection and the type of planet we leave to our kids and grandkids.
Mr. Stephen Guilbeault, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Michael.
And that is our program for this Wednesday. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. We leave you this evening with the scene from the House of Commons earlier this afternoon as MPs welcome members of Canada's Olympic and Paralympic team. Have a good night.